Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective. We're going to continue in our study. We are God's models, so we should be showing the world, or we should be modeling the virtues of God before a dark world. Before we continue in our study, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Like the videos, hit the notification bell for you YouTube viewers to be notified of upcoming studies. All right. Now we're talking about how do Christians fit in our culture, our government. And the question is, what does God say? And when we look at the cultural climate of today, people are drawing their lines not on Christianity, but on cultural, patriotism, things like that. So what does the Bible say about that? Now, in 1 Peter and in chapter 2, remember he said in verse 9, just by way of refresher, he says, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, and a people for his possession, so that you may proclaim the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." Now, we said we describe who we are. In other words, what we are to God. We are sons of God, joint heirs with Christ. God is our Father, where we cry, Abba, Father. That's who we are. But what we do, in other words, the purpose of God on this planet during this time, is what we need to discover. And what Peter is saying here is, you are placed here, we are placed here as Christians, as the church, as the body of Christ. We are placed here to shine our lights. Now, last time we got into in verse 11, he says, based upon the fact that we are chosen generations, he now says, "Dear friends, I urge you as strangers and temporary residents to abstain from fleshly desires that war against your souls. Conduct yourselves honorably among the Gentiles, so in the case that they speak against you as those who do what is evil, they will, by observing your good works, glorify God on the day of visitation." Again, this is important because what does he mean by this? And so we went to Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus gives his criteria for what it means to be his disciple. And that's important because, remember, we went through the first thing is, he says to have a certain godly character. Okay, a godly character, which is, was spelled out in the Beatitudes, the kind of character that should possess inside all of us: being merciful, peaceful, being pure of heart, having a humble and a meek attitude before God. Extremely important. And the reason why, because he says, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works." And that is an interesting thing. I want to go back to there because I didn't highlight this, but I want to highlight it again. And in Matthew chapter 5 again, I want to go back there before I continue on, because this is extremely important as we move forward into this, what is God's purpose. Now, remember I said we're God's models, okay? We're put here. In fact, remember he said we're, in Peter, remember in verse 9, he says that we are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, so that we may proclaim the praises of him. And that's what models do, remember. That's what trophies do. I want to go back and highlight something. I think it's extremely important to understand the kind of mindset we should have. Now, this is in chapter 5. Now, remember, Jesus also said that unless your righteousness exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees, you will not get into heaven, because they were religious people. And religious people do not possess these qualities that Jesus says we ought to possess. The Beatitudes, even though they're really not Beatitudes, they're not attitudes. That's a kind of a misnomer. It's a mislabeling here. Okay, and by the way, again, Jesus didn't call them Beatitudes. Commentators did that. They put this title on here. These are qualities. This is, in Galatians, it's called the fruit of the Spirit. This is what God works in our character, works in our mindset. So they're not just attitude. We don't have an attitude of life about that. But he also says, in verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but rather on a lampstand, and to give light for all. In the same way, let your light shine before men, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. How does God get glory? We'll get to that in a moment later. But notice he says, you ever notice when you are trying to labor for a person, when you're trying to get a person to see your point of view, mere words are not enough often. Now, maybe in some cases people will listen to you, but more than oftentimes we all can say that we're not heard, right? Well, what did Jesus say to do? Well, he said, let your light shine. And what does the light do? It shines on your works. If you let your light shine, then they will be able to see your good works. Now, it's kind of interesting because I remember just earlier today, I picked a shirt out of the closet, and it was the wrong shirt. And the reason why, because it was dark. When I turned the light on in my closet, I was able to pick the shirt that I want because it had light. In other words, sometimes we may say, I'm trying to do something for a person, where he says, then let your light shine. Well, when you let your light shine, it illuminates that people can see the good work. Now, what is the good work? The good news of the gospel. Well, back in Peter says what the good work is, that we're singing the praises of God. Now, to translate that even further, it means that we're preaching the good news. We're here to preach the good news about Jesus. But we do so with our life. Now, back to Peter. And that's why he says that even, in verse 12 again, even if they speak against you as evildoers, and that's what the world is doing right now. They're calling us crazy. They're calling Christians insane, mentally disturbed. These are some of the words that some people have used for us. Peter said, but that's okay. Even if they're speaking against you as evildoers, they may by your good works, which, notice, he says, they are observing. So this is what they see. This is what they're going to see. And as I said, they're not going to argue with their eyes. They are going to see certain things. So, in the very next verse, then he says, then submit to every human authority. I want to do this recap because I want these things, especially as we kind of move forward now into this section where we kind of talk about how do we apply this thing and to different aspects of our society, our life. So the first thing he said, submit to every authority. Now, I mentioned this in the last video, but the word submit, and I want to highlight it again, but that the word submit is a military word, which means I voluntarily subject myself under the authority of. So when he says submit to every human authority, remember, one of the biggest misunderstanding is that the word submission has been taught that this is your place. No, it's not our place, because who we are, male or female, we are sons of God. We are heirs of God. That's who we are. Now, what we do, he says submit. And so the word submission is to voluntarily submit yourself under. But what's the purpose? And the word submission is God's tool. Submission is a tool of God. Why? Because it puts me in a place where people can watch me. It puts me in a place where people can look And even though they're saying, I'm evil, they're watching. And guess what? They're not going to argue with what they see. So it's important, what do they see? Well, what they see is what we model. Now I'll go further with this in the next video. I'll see you then.